Welcome to the third episode of the More Than Playing podcast presented by myself, Griffen Dempsey, and my co-host, Jonathan Garner. Today's episode, John and I had the opportunity to interview head rifle coach Cameron Zwart and rifleman Collin Fox. Without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, now welcoming on Coach Cam and Collin. Gentlemen, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thanks for having us.
Be here.
Of course, anytime.
So you guys want to talk about your journey for Collin, like as a high school athlete coming here and joining the rifle team here, and for Coach you, Cam, talk about coaching and how you got the job here. You start with you, Coach.
Well, I attended Grand Valley and competed on the rifle team when I was here. I graduated in 2007 and was really kind of involved as a volunteer capacity for the next couple of seasons after that. Would periodically come down and try to help work with some of the incoming kids. And then there was a period of time I was just kind of uninvolved with the sport altogether. I was approached in the spring of 2015 by the then head coach Ryan Phillips, who said that he this was going to be his last season. He was going to transition some things in his personal life and just couldn't be the head coach anymore. So I asked if I would serve in that capacity in the fall of 2015. I said that I would do it with some hesitation. I knew what it was going to take. I knew it was a lot of work to try to build and maintain a program. The fall of 2015 kind of came around, and I hadn't heard anything from the university, and I thought, well, they must have found somebody else. I'm off the hook on this one. And I got a call right after Labor Day and said, practices are starting, this is your team. And I went down and I met the three people that were on the team at that point. And that's what I had to work with starting off. So it was right from the get-go, it was trying to build a team because there really wasn't many individuals that were there. Fast forward to January of 2016. So we're a semester into what was my first season. And I kind of had a moment of self-reflection, like, hey, if you're going to do this, run this program, you need to be all in on it. And at that point, I felt like I was kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So really, as a coach, I looked at everything that we were doing and said, hey, I'm going to be all in. And it was at that point that we really became more intentional and aggressive with what we did, scheduling matches, the structure of practices, the intentional recruitment of individuals to join the team. And, it eventually, it's all led up to where we're at now. We are one of the busiest club sports team, not only at Grand Valley, but probably across the country. There's very few programs which can boast a schedule like we maintain with matches in a normal year. So a non-COVID year, members of our club are participating in over 100 different sanctioned activities each year. In fact, our club's a little bit different or unique in the fact that the field of collegiate rifle is there's not a lot of schools. So there's some Division I schools, a couple Division II, and a couple Division III, and then a lot of club sport teams. So for everybody regionally to try to get matches in, occasionally club sport teams will fill out NCAA schedules. So for example, we've shot matches against the Coast Guard Academy, which is a D3 school. Morehead State, Akron University, those are D1 schools. So we're really unique in that regard, in that even though we're a club sport team, the level of competition which we compete against is still some of the right. toughest in the nation. In fact, and Collin will tell you this too, it's not uncommon for us to shoot matches at the national level in which we're sharing the line with Olympians or multiple time Olympians. In fact, Collin will tell you, recently he was at a match prior to COVID in which there was a couple lanes down from him was a gold medal winner in the Olympic Games. So, I mean, it's
that's wild.
We're very unique in that regard.
Yeah. So you touched base on how you're an alumni here at Grand Valley. Does that kind of mean a little more to you being a coach now?
Absolutely. Yeah. When I think about the success of the program, I mean, it's tied to my legacy, moving forward. And, I often reference what we did when I was on the team. Up until that point, my senior year was probably the strongest our team had ever competed. So, drawing the comparison to what our current teams are doing, always comparing it to what I did. And, when they eventually surpassed that, what that meant to me to be a part of setting a school records as an athlete and then breaking those school records as a coach. It was, it's very unique and very enjoyable.
You've been really successful throughout your tenure. Like, you guys have won 4 consecutive mid-state championships since you've been here. So how does that, do you build a culture around making everybody buy into winning competitions like that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, you can only be successful if you're willing to put in the work to achieve what success is. And I think that our club offers a good mixture of opportunities because not everybody wants to be all in. This is supposed to be fun, right? And for some people, their definition of fun is different than what it is for others. So, like Collin, for example, he's all in. He shows up to the practices and was shooting all the big time matches. And that's why he was a starter on our team and has been for a couple seasons. But not everybody is in that same boat. That's fine. There's some individuals that hey, once or twice a month is all I can commit, and I think that there's a spot for them. The only thing is, whenever you're present at practice, we ask that you're all in, that you're all there. So if your time commitment's only a couple times a month, hey, those couple times a month, I need you all in. I need you all here. But if it's every practice 2 or 3 times a week and every match on the weekends, well, that's great too. Wherever you're going to be, you just need to be all there on it.
Right, 100%. I mean, you gave us a great intro, Collin. We haven't talked to you yet. What's your story on how you got here?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of interesting. Originally, I did precision archery in high school. I did that all 4 years, in fact, and I love that. So I have a little bit of a background with precision shooting already. But when I got here to GV, there wasn't really a program like that available. And I just kind of heard word of mouth about this rifle club. And so I just went to one practice just to see how it went. And after our first away match, when everything went smoothly and I actually bonded with the team, that's when I knew I was all in and I wanted to fully commit to this sort of thing. Now it's been 4 years. I've watched this team grow. We were at our highest right before COVID really hit us. And I remember at Student Life Night during my first year before joining this club, and they kept saying, oh, well, we placed 7th in nationals. But then by the time that year before COVID really hit, because nationals was canceled by that, the year before that, we hit 2nd place in the nation right there in just that short amount of time. So it's been very nice to see that transformation, that growth throughout the years.
Exactly. So you said that you heard about rifle when you got here at Grand Valley. So you didn't come to Grand Valley for this specific program, correct?
Correct. I came here for academics, but I'm probably going to stay within the GV community in part because of this. So it's worked out.
Definitely put the cherry on top. Mm-hmm. I mean, where I come from, high school, I honestly didn't even know rifle was a program at any colleges. So this right here, I'm very new to this whole rifling and how that works. Do you kind of want to touch base on, for those that don't know much about the sport and what it entails and everything?
Coach,
either one.
Yeah, there's basically 2 disciplines when it comes to collegiate rifle shooting, and that is small bore rifle, which is a 22 caliber rifle, which is shot at 50 foot. There's 3 positions in which you shoot that: prone, standing, and kneeling position, with most matches being 20 shots in each position for 60 shots total. The other discipline is air rifle, which is also 60 shots, and that's fired at 10 meters. An air rifle has a projectile that's .177 compared to a .22 on the small bore rifle. Most matches are going to have both of those things a shot at the collegiate level, but there's other variations of shooting both of those guns in open competitions that occasionally we compete in as well. So you mentioned our championships in the Mid-State Rifle League. That's actually a 4-position league in which sitting is the other position that's added in. But there's a lot of other things in the collegiate shooting world we're also starting to dip our toe in, and that's air pistol, which is similar to air rifle, except in pistol format, 10 meters, 60 shots. But there's other things out there that we're just not doing at this point, right. Particularly due to the restraints of the facility. We can't engage in shotgun or things like that.
Mm-hmm. You guys are definitely getting your shots off. That's for sure. Every single competition.
Yeah.
Well, we've actually been very lucky because we do a lot of what are called postal matches where we can upload our scores and our targets to the internet. So even with all this going on, we can still compete in matches. It's just that we're with each other on a local level, so we don't risk spreading anything, but we can still compete with people across the country.
Oh, that's perfect. So it works out.
So on the topic of those virtual matches, like, do you prefer, like, what's the pros of like doing a virtual match versus like an in-person match?
That's actually a really good question. So the pros for virtual versus in-person. So with virtual, I could do matches just at regular practice times. I don't have to commit any extra time. I just am told about that ahead of time and I know what to do. It's very casual because you have your coaches there if need be. And it's just very relaxed because it feels like any other practice. And the cool part about that is because you compete against people you never could possible. For example, I think we competed against a Hawaii school at one point. Like that would have taken a lot more effort to do it in person. But the downside is sometimes it doesn't feel as serious of a match because you're still within the same environment that you're always practicing in, as opposed to some place where it feels totally serious and in the moment.
Get locked in, right?
Yeah. So the benefits of traveling is that you can feel much more motivated when, for example, in collegiate nationals down in Georgia, when you've gone through the long drive all the way down there, and you see just 100 other people on the line with you from all across the nation. And then you're like, yeah, I'm here. I'm at nationals. Right. And so you can sometimes feel more pumped to want to do even better. And the same is like that for any other national level match that we've done as well. Plus, I've noticed that because the sport is more individual focused, our best team bonding is actually during those trips because we have the most time to talk with each other and just go and have fun and do other fun activities too after the matches and stuff like that. So pros and cons to both, but thanks for asking that.
Coach, do you have any pros and cons as a coach on these virtual matches?
Yeah, so doing the postal or the virtual matches, like Collin said, they just kind of seamlessly fit into our practice schedule or our regular meeting times. So from an administrative point of view, it's easier to accomplish those because there's a little bit of flexibility with the days or the times in which you conduct those. There's no travel associated with those. And it's really opened up our opportunity to compete against a lot of different clubs or universities that simply would not be possible. For example, the past 2 years we've competed in an international postal match. Both years we've won that match. That match had schools from Germany and Switzerland in it. So that would not be possible. The thing with shooting is the range conditions at an indoor range are almost identical no matter where you go. So the 50-foot range here is the same 50-foot that it is in Switzerland. So there's really not a ton of different variables. Now, outdoor shooting is much different. But to Collin's point, too, about the travel matches, I really enjoy those because of the camaraderie that the kids have and how I'm able to learn more about these kids as individuals, more than just outside of the sport. They've offered the opportunity for a lot of kids to see and experience things that they probably wouldn't otherwise. When we travel to the Coast Guard Academy, that's in Connecticut. Well, each time we do that trip, we spend a night in Manhattan, in New York City, just kind of experiencing what it's like there.
Right.
When we go to before COVID, we went to Kentucky for a match, and we spent some time in the Hawking Hills in Ohio. When we've gone to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, just all the sights that there is to see in Colorado. So a lot of these things, a lot of people wouldn't experience were it not for the travel associated with the sport.
Mm-hmm. You're traveling all over the place.
Yeah, we've shot, I think, in 11 different states in the past few years. So we've been very active.
Yeah, it's more states than I've ever been to. You guys did in the last 2 years.
Going back to Collin's point about like not being like the virtual matches, you might not have that sense of focus as like you would like in a regular event. Coach, is there anything that you do to like kind of prep your athletes on like to make them feel as if it's like a real event?
Well, it's almost by design that they kind of have not necessarily a lack of focus, but low sense of apprehension. They're not worked up, So I always kind of talk about treating each practice as if it were a match. So many times our practices are matches. So there's kind of almost no differentiation some days between what is a practice and what is a match because they're so similarly structured. So that's a good thing. If you're always existing in that match mode, and for you, it doesn't raise your level of emotion or nervousness or concern, and you can carry that over into these travel matches. I think that there's a benefit there. Most of this sport is mental. Yeah. Very little of it is actual physical ability. It's your ability to overcome the mental aspects and the repetitions of completing a mental activity. So, if we can take some of that anxiety away because our practices and our matches feel the same, that's to our advantage.
Yeah, sometimes that's the toughest battle in any sport, is just the mental aspect that is involved with it. So, and also touching back on the virtual matches that you guys play or compete in, does the honor system kind of fall into that? Like, how do you make sure that everybody is sending in like the correct scores that are shot?
Yeah, so it just depends on the competitions. Some competitions, they will send you the targets ahead of time, and the targets will be pre-printed with labels on them. Others are not as rigid with that. It really does come down to following the rules and everybody's agreement to follow the rules ahead of time. The way that we've kind of progressed in the ability to score targets is a lot of it is removed from the individual specifically because the targets, when we shoot paper targets, they are run through a scanner, and there's a computer program that then takes that image and then scores the target. So that creates a digital file which displays the target and then the value of each shot on the target. Yeah. So it kind of takes that human error component out of it, and it does give a way to articulate what the scores were. Of course, the individual or the coach needs to make sure that you're still adhering to the time limits, or that the position was legal, or that the rifle was within spec. Generally, those things you're held to an honor system regardless of the system that you choose. Now, another advancement that we've had is we began to purchase at our club electronic targets, and these are pretty neat in that you shoot at a target. It was actually a hole cut in a piece of paper. Essentially, you shoot through that, and the score is registered by microphones assessing where the pellet or bullet passed through that hole. Then that will register on a computer monitor. There's really no way to trick that or to change that. Unless you can work around code. It's pretty much accepted that's a pretty good system for tracking and documenting scores. So that as these things kind of evolve, the opportunity or the ability to doctor scores or cheat is really minimized.
It's crazy how much is going into these matches now that COVID is the thing. Would you say there's more more efforts being put on, like, say, your part and like everyone putting together these matches now since with COVID than there was before?
Yeah, this fall, Collin competed in a match that was entitled the COVID Cup. So, I mean, the people are purposely coming up with these names because of this in these matches.
Yeah, it's changing everything.
Hopefully, it's the first annual and the last annual COVID Cup.
Yeah, hopefully.
So going back, we'll switch it up. So you're talking about going on those military trips. Now, does that can you touch a little bit like on the bases you've been to and like the experiences you've got at those bases?
Hey, Collin, why don't you talk about traveling down to Fort Benning for our national championship?
Yeah, sure. So Fort Benning is the site of our collegiate nationals. And if you've ever been to Fort Benning, it's essentially a base so large that it's a tiny city within its own right. When you're actually on the grounds there, you may have to pass through some gates, but it really feels more of like a really gated community with just a lot of soldiers running around and doing stuff. Because we work around with firearms, we do get connected with a lot of other veterans in our areas. A lot of people that compete just as retired people are often also veterans. And these bases themselves are very interesting to compete on because it's just a different sort of culture around to be present. So as a student visiting, it's always interesting.
Are competitions, is there a sense of more pressure being on a military base versus being at like a normal shooting range?
I do feel a little bit more motivation to compete harder as a civilian against someone in the military, but other than that, it's just more of a camaraderie of we're all interested in the same sport. So then we're all, competing together and doing our best. So good question.
Do you interact with the soldiers while you're there, or do you guys more keep to yourself and just like play your competition and like that's it?
Well, funny thing is actually we competed against some military schools before, but a lot of those sometimes are postal or we don't see them until the championships, and so we don't interact with them that much. But ironically, we've actually interacted more with the professional Army marksmanship unit. So they're a section of the Army that professionally do this, and they do this at the Olympic level. And so these are some of the Olympians that we've competed against in these national and international matches. And I've spoken to them in individual times, we've had dinner with them. We've gone to seminars with them. So we've actually interacted with more of these professionals, more so than these cadets, these students at these academies.
To piggyback on what Collin is saying, the Army Marksmanship Unit has provided as a service to the general shooting community a lot of clinics and camps and just kind of discussions individually and group based about marksmanship and shooting. And that unit within the Army has multiple Olympians as members and coaches, national team members, individuals who have competed in World Cups and Grand Prix, and really the highest level of rifle athlete in our country are really a part of that group. And it's amazing how approachable that they are. Like Collin said, an individual of our club who began shooting, like a year ago, could really approach somebody that's a multiple time Olympian and have them give them the time of day about their philosophies or specifics on how to train or practice. It's in fact, a lot of the photographs of our team that I'm most fond of are the whole team, with members of that Army Marksmanship Unit in the photograph with us, and you're like, that guy's won a World Cup before. That's a huge deal in our sport. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah,
now, this question's for both of you. It's kind of a big question. Is there do you see a correlation of people in the rifling community, as hunters? Do the athletes on your team come from hunting backgrounds? Collin, is that how you first got started hunting?
Oh, well, I can start with this. I get this question a lot, actually. A lot of people do ask if I was originally a hunter and I got into this. I don't come from a family that hunts, so I actually never learned, but I'm curious to learn, actually. But what we do see a lot of times is that we get a mix of different people coming to our first kind of membership meetings to try to get in all the interesting recruits after campus life night. And so we see some people with no experience at all with firearms, but then we do see that hunting crowd where their only experience with firearms is just through the use of hunting. And some of them turn out to be very, very great marksmen. But the ironic thing is that people with next to no experience actually tend to learn the fastest and actually tend to grow the most, because they don't have the bad habits with firearms that they might have used if they were just doing it on their own throughout the whole years before coming to GV. So thanks for asking that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Coach, how about
absolutely. When we get individuals into our group, it is a pretty eclectic a bunch that come out for the team. Many have preconceived notions about what shooting is and what shooting isn't. Most of those get thrown out the window right away, because what we do is so different than what many individuals with no experience have done. We're competitive shooters in the similar disciplines as the Olympics. Most of your deer hunters and recreational shooters have never done anything remotely close to this. And to Collin's point, most of the individuals who ultimately find the highest level of success on our team have very, very little or no experience shooting. I think of Christian Yap in particular, had never shot a firearm in his life. And in his 4-year career with Grand Valley, went on to be the most successful shooter we've probably ever had. We get a lot of individuals that, for whatever reason, were never allowed or given the opportunity to shoot guns, and they're intrigued by the idea of it, and that's why they join the club. I've made a conscious effort to try to recruit individuals with experience. To not much success. Listen, a lot of these junior athletes are chasing that athletic scholarship, and that's not something that we give. Now, our tuition rates are very competitive. In fact, I think it's a really great value, especially for the in-state rate. But there's just a persona that someone wraps themselves up in, that they need to have this athletic scholarship. So that's a lot of kids in the junior ranks are chasing that. So like I always say, this is a great school. This is a great program. And I'd love to have more of those kids with experience. But I think we've kind of carved out that we're different in that a lot of the other schools we compete against have recruit high schoolers with a tremendous amount of experience. We don't. We are truly grassroots. You come in as a freshman or a sophomore and you work your absolute hardest, and that's the team that we're bringing out there every day. And we've been incredibly successful doing that. In fact, there's many times that we've beat NCAA schools in the national rankings, as determined by the National Rifle Association at the end of the year, that have scholarship athletes on it, and that our guy who's never shot and picked it up 2 years ago is smoking them. You know, it comes down to your mindset and your ability to work hard.
So you guys have both done quite a bit here at your time at Grand Valley, between like recruiting people, traveling across country, and doing all that. What would you say your favorite memory is? Collin, do you want to start off?
Oh, like a favorite specific memory?
Yeah.
I would probably say that awards banquet a few years back at Collegiate Nationals, because that was the year that we found out that we scored in second place. And by that point, we really felt like, because this was before COVID, we really felt like that next year we could take first in the nation. And GV had never done anything like that. We'd never done anything like that before. As well as just the fact that we had been traveling for a few days, we'd been competing for a few days, and we were all exhausted. And it was just amazing to hear that we had done so well, you know, and all of our hard work in the season had paid off. So I would say that that's my favorite moment.
How long ago was that? I'm sorry, Coach. What would you say?
Oh, technically about 2 years ago, because
2019.
Yeah.
19.
Yeah, that was my same experience too, Collin, was that year, because I remember the way that they do these national championship matches is, you know what the scores are after day one, and you have a pretty good idea of where they're at after the half of the day two, but then they stop pushing the scores out. Like they cut it off so that no one knows so the match is still going on, but no one really knows where they're at unless you can walk around and add up a bunch of people's scores individually. The team things are just, they don't push it out because they want it. they want you to kind of be in suspense. So that year, that was the 2018-2019 championship. I had done the math, and at that point, I had convinced myself that for the second year, we were third in the nation, which I was very pleased with. But we were third in the nation the year prior. I was, secretly, and I didn't probably show this, I was disappointed that we didn't move up, that we weren't national runners up. So that night, there was the awards banquet. Mind you, we go into this thing, we still don't know what's going to get announced, but I have convinced myself, and I have talked to the team, that I believe that we were third. And then they make the announcement in third place, North Dakota State University. And, I'm looking around oh man, I got the math wrong on this thing.
Yeah,
we're off, we're not even on the podium.
Right.
And then they said second place, Grand Valley State University. I mean, it just the whole wave of emotions that accompanied, thinking that we were a certain place, then thinking that we were out of it, and then finding out that we were better than I had hoped and I had expected, and then just kind of thinking back on everything, just hit you, everything that you had done up to that point to then stand on that stage with the team and get that national runner-up trophy. I mean, it's very by far that's and there's been a ton of good experiences. There's really been hardly any negative. I mean, everything's been pretty good, but that was up there with lifetime achievements. I mean, that was really important to me, and that was a lot of fun.
It's very cool. To wrap it up, we'll do one more question. Collin, we'll start with you. So what would you recommend to someone like yourself coming to Grand Valley, knowing nothing about rifling? Like, what would you say to them to come try out the club?
To come try out the club, I would just say give it a few weeks and then go to the first away match. I know that the president at GV has kind of said that there's a good possibility that things will be more open up within this next fall semester. So to all the people watching this now, stick around with it, keep training and just go to that first away match, because I really had a lot of doubts in myself the first couple weeks of practice, because there's just so many new things to keep track of. And I just kept making random mistakes that would hurt my score. But then by the time I got to that first ever match, I realized how much I actually knew and how much I was able to actually do well, in fact. And then also just the camaraderie aspect for it. So I'd say just stick around for that first away match. And then if it clicks, then keep going with it. And if not, then, it's been nice, being with you. So my advice is just to stick with it and then see how that camaraderie will affect you.
Right.
Now, Coach, what would you say to?
Well, for anybody that's considered joining the club, listen, you don't need experience. You don't need a tremendous amount of time commitment. The sport and the club is what you want to make of it. Me and the other members of the coaching staff are there to help you achieve your goals. Now, I have some things that I want to achieve, but those might not necessarily be the same thing for you. What I want every kid to do is to be open and honest with me what they want to obtain or achieve in the club, and that they keep us advised of those goals so that we can work towards that. Again, if you want to practice 3 days a week, we're there. If you want to practice twice a month, we're there. If you have a ton of experience, great. If you don't have any experience, we'll get you there. If you want to travel to all the away matches, I'm glad you're coming along for the ride. If you say, hey, I got a job on the weekends and I can't make those, cool. Just keep me up to date with what you got going on. So no matter where you're at or what your level of experience is, there's a place for you on this club. But keep in mind, your success and your failure will always exclusively rest on your shoulders. No one will pass you the ball. No one's going to set you up to take that shot. You need to do that. And when you succeed, everything that you've done to that point has led to your success. When you fail, everything that you didn't do has led you to this point of failure. That's it. There is no more or less to it. It's the persistent pursuit of perfection. And if you're somebody that wants to pursue that, you should come out.
Right.
Sounds good. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for both of you guys for coming on. We're looking forward to hearing about your success the rest of the season, and hopefully we'll be able to get out to an event here coming up soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having us on. If I could throw one more plug out there, we, as a club, we are really trying to develop our parasport component, which is individuals that have physical limitations that want to participate in rifle shooting. We do have some equipment, and we have some special things that can really accommodate individuals that want to join or participate that maybe have some physical limitations. So if you're hearing this and you're kind of on the edge of, if you're looking for something to do, come on out. And in fact, we have an assistant coach that's a para-athlete himself. He had lost a leg some years back, and so we have somebody that can relate to you and work with you, and we'd really like to see some people join that part of our club.
It's very cool. Or rifling is definitely a place to be, no matter your background and experience. Rifle it up. All right, thanks, guys.
All right. Yep. Thanks, guys.
Right. Take care. Thank you.
And that concludes our interview with Coach Cam and Marksman Collin. Join us next week as we will be outside doing live interviews with players participating in the Club Sports Olympics. Also, don't forget that it is more than playing and to be better.
Peace.